terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated.
بطلب من المصريين طلب يوم الجمعة الجاية لابد من نزول كل المصريين الشرفاء الأمناء ينزلوا ليه؟ ينزلوا عشان يديني تفويض وأمر بإني أواجه العنف والإرهاب المحتمل.
Our country and the United States and Egypt have dealt with the same enemy. It's a common enemy, and it's an enemy called terrorism.
يقول الدكتور روبرتوس في مقال بعنوان الحرب ضد الإرهاب خدعة. لقد أدركت أن الخوف أقوى سلاح يمكن أن تستخدمه أي حكومة لتحقيق أجندات غير معلنة.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda is completely broken as an organization. It does not pose, and never did pose, an existential threat to the existence of the United States. But it is a convenient tool in the hands of a war industry and in the hands of the ruling corporate elite.
Well, Al-Qaeda is a manufactured enemy, and it's made in the USA and to an extent made in Britain.
Al-Qaeda is full of people from Saudi intelligence, from U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, and of course Egyptian intelligence. It couldn't do anything on its own.
The mainstream media don't report this, but it is now on the record and officially documented that decades of terror attacks against their own population are in fact organized by the CIA and the White House.
Operation Northwoods with evidence of Operation Gladio. We have the data now available. And then the people understand that this exists, but they still have a psychological moment where they have a hard time to believe that it still goes on, because it's bad news. You know, it basically means that terrorism can be manipulated in order to move people around like sheep, really. And if you're told you're sheep and you're being moved by false flag terrorism, I mean, this is really something you don't want to hear.
So I think that there are really many agendas that the FBI is serving. One agenda, the United States is engaged in wars of aggression that are war crimes under the Nuremberg Standard. And the United States gets a lot of criticism. And so one way to deflect that criticism is to always have acts of terrorism. And these manufactured, fabricated acts of terrorism are used in a propagandistic way to justify the wars against terrorist countries. And of course also they're being used to create a police state. And also people are making a lot of money out of it. Look at all the full body scanners that have gone into the airports.
The terrorist directive commands them to kill Christians and Jews, to kill all Americans, and make no distinctions among military and civilians, including women and children.
When you walked into the convention center, and they had these big banners hanging up from the over this area, and it said, "Death to Israel, death to America." one of the people who were working with me said, "You know what, Bob? These people are Muslim Brotherhood." I said, "What's that?"
Now, in my mind, the Muslim Brotherhood is the mother of all Islamic organization of the 20th century, including Al-Qaeda.
The so-called Arab Spring in the Middle East has brought the Muslim Brotherhood to the threshold of power and influence. But the Middle East is not the only place where the Muslim Brotherhood is vying for power. A Norwegian journalist who did a film about the Muslim Brotherhood went to the Middle East and spoke with the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they told him they have a long-term plan to take over Norway and the rest of Europe, as part of bringing the whole world under Islam. Al-Kubaisi interviewed Camille Al-Najjar, who left the Muslim Brotherhood and is now under threat of death.
Okay, they're trying to deceive the people, and they have managed to deceive a lot of Western politicians into believing them. Their only aim is to control the world with Islam. They know they cannot use force to convert the West, so they use deceit.
The Muslim Brotherhood, they don't, it's not like, okay, we will take over the world and the power, and no, not like this. They don't speak about power at all. They say, okay, now we want only this, and then this, and then this, and then they start to work to gain more power.
Dale heard CBN News in Oslo, Norway. Al-Kubaisi also interviewed Gamal al-Banna, the brother of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928, Hassan al-Banna. And he had surprisingly harsh words for the modern Muslim Brotherhood movement, saying it does not believe in freedom.
Not in any way. They do not believe in freedom at all. There is no Islamic authority that respects freedom or democracy.
Al-Banna also condemned the state of modern Islamic culture.
The Muslim mind is rusty. It has done nothing for the last 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago, the innovation ended. What does that mean? It means that you act without thinking. Muslims have become like monkeys, only imitating others. This has lasted 1,000 years.
Youssef has published a memoir called Son of Hamas. In it, he describes being arrested and witnessing what he says were Hamas brutalities inside prison. That's when he joined up with Israel's security forces to help kill and arrest members of the militant organization. He has since moved to the U.S. and converted to Christianity, but not without a few words on Islam, a religion he says teaches people to kill.
The biggest terrorist is the God of the Quran. I know this is very dangerous, and I know this will offend many people, but my goal not to offend them. What I'm saying, that the biggest terrorist is Allah of the Quran, the God of the Quran, the God of Islam.
Al-Banna says the Brotherhood has instituted the wearing of the hijab or headscarf by Muslim women as a means of social control. Even the sister of the Muslim Brotherhood founder did not wear a hijab. Class photos from Cairo University show the evolution of the Muslim Brotherhood's program to force women to wear the hijab. In 1959, no Muslim women are wearing headscarves, and none in 1978. By 2004, 90% of the women are wearing the headscarf. The headscarf has been called the Muslim Brotherhood's logo.
أن الفاشية الدينية الإسلامية قديمة جدا، يعني لا تبدأ فقط بصعود التيار السلفي أو صعود حركة الإخوان المسلمين. أنا بأؤرخ بداية الفاشية الدينية الإسلامية بفتح مكة. بفتح مكة.
And those who commit evil in the name of Allah blaspheme the name of Allah. The terrorists are traitors to their own faith, trying in effect to hijack Islam itself.
بصراحة أنا لو شفت إخواني هبحهم مش هستنى عليه.
More than a decade after 9/11, hate crimes against Muslims are on the rise.
The woman in custody facing hate crime charges after telling police she pushed the man to his death because she thought he was a Muslim.
But twice last fall, someone left copies of the Quran in public toilets at Pace University in New York.
The things that are now said about Muslims in this country, it could not be said about any other ethnic group. And I find it very frightening because when we suffer another terrorist attack on American soil, this propaganda and racism and hate talk has, I fear, laid the grounds for attacks against innocent American citizens who happen to be Muslim, especially those who are observant.
To say, because it's true and it should be publicly acknowledged, that sometimes people get obsessed with the surfaces. They see headscarf, they see primitive, backward. I met many Muslim women here. They're so smart, so energetic, so committed. It's deeply inspiring. And I wish more people in the West, in particular the West people who call themselves secular and liberal and leftist, that they have the same opportunity as me to meet these women and to stop just looking at the surface and seeing people's hearts, their souls, but also their brains.
President Bush, right after 9/11, had a kind of pathetic speech in which he asked, why do they hate us? And he said, well, they hate us because of our freedom and our wonderful so-and-so. Shortly after that, the Pentagon had a study done by a research institute in the Pentagon, Defense Science Board, which came out with an analysis of a comment on Bush's speech. And essentially they reiterated what the National Security Council had said back in 1958. They don't hate our freedoms, they hate our policies. They hate our policy of undermining democracy, undermining development, supporting brutal and harsh regimes because of our interest in controlling their resources. And there's plenty of information in between that's
Bin Laden is gone. Who is Washington's number one enemy now?
Washington's enemy is an enemy that doesn't exist. We're fighting an Islamic enemy that Washington believes is out to kill us because we have elections, because we're free, because we have women in the workplace. It's an enemy that doesn't exist. It didn't exist when Bin Laden was alive. It doesn't exist now.
Talks about an incident that happened in Turkey. I believe this was a little bit before 9/11. A high-level, supposed senior Al-Qaeda commander was arrested in Turkey, and the guards at the prison, who were devout Muslims, noticed that he wasn't praying. He was asking for pork, and they said, "What? We thought you were a radical Muslim." And he kind of laughed and said, "No, this is all just a strategy of tension."
Well, I was successful as an informant from 2003 to early 2006. And one day, as I was speaking to my handler, her name was Tracy Hanlon, I said, I think I'm interested in infiltrating mosques. And she said, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. You would be gold. They needed a man, a specific kind of man, a certain man who can, with the proper training, can adapt and blend into the Muslim community, learn the language, learn the religion, and use the religion and the culture against the Muslim community. The FBI supplied me with sophisticated surveillance devices. They were called key fobs. It's like a car remote control. I had maybe between 5 and 6 of them. They're always charged, and I left them around the mosques where I would frequently pray. I had one in my pocket the entire time, always on. And I had the other key fobs just laying around in certain places where they wanted me to target, like the imams' offices, certain board members' offices, certain worshippers' cars, in their homes. So those devices were pretty much used on a daily basis.
Did you use any information that you acquired to create other informants?
Yes, that was part of my role on Operation Flex. For example, in my conversations or in their private conversations, let's say certain things would come up, like if a Muslim man was married and he had a girlfriend, a mistress, the FBI would use that information to blackmail that individual to become an informant. Or if someone perhaps had a different sexual orientation, the FBI would use that information to blackmail them to become an informant. Or a certain youth, if they had recreational drug use or desire to use certain narcotics on a misdemeanor level.
Does the U.S. entrap people abroad too?
Abroad? Yes. Operation Flex began in the United States, but Operation Flex expanded into beyond the borders of the United States. And there were people in Afghanistan and a certain few in Iraq, a few in Yemen, who were entrapped, but they were used, that method of entrapment was used to blackmail them to become informants, not lead to an arrest. It was to blackmail them. Usually, when they want you, they meaning federal authorities, DEA, ATF, FBI, they will arrange some type of operation where they lure you in an entrapment manner, where you may be innocent of that particular crime, but they'll use that arrest to pressure you to plead guilty on other arrests.
We are very efficient in this day and age, in the last 20 years, in creating enemies. We're not very efficient in creating security for the United States. We have the best educated population in the world, and we have the people with the littlest amount of common sense. We are definitely fighting a religious war. And until we come to realize that, we are never going to be able to defeat it. In fact, we're encouraging the growth of a new generation of people who are going to fight us.
Are other minority communities in America targeted as intensively as Muslims?
I think the order of today, where the FBI needs an enemy, they found it in Islam. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to last a long time. Religious war, yes, but they will never say that. because they can't. It's a violation of one's constitutional rights. But that's exactly what it is. The war on terror is a war on Islam.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barack Obama said the United States is not and will never be at war with Islam, which is why our next story is provoking so much controversy. It concerns inscriptions that refer to biblical texts on weapons being deployed by American forces. Here's our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross. Brian?
Martin, to prevent the suspicion, the United States is conducting a Christian crusade against Muslims. Members of the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan are strictly prohibited from proselytizing, promoting any religion, faith, or practice. It's called General Order Number 1, but apparently one of the Pentagon's big suppliers never got the memo.
Some soldiers call them Jesus rifles. That's because the sights on their gun, including this one used to train soldiers in Iraq, contain a secret coded reference to New Testament passages about Jesus Christ. Here, JN 812, reference to the book of John, chapter 8, verse 12, which reads in part, "Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world." Other sites have references to the New Testament books of Matthew, Revelation, and Corinthians, such as this scope used by Special Forces, encoded with another reference to a verse about the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. The rifle sights are produced by the Trigicon Company of Wixom, Michigan, which has almost $1 billion in Pentagon contracts. The Trigicon spokesman said there was nothing wrong or illegal about adding the biblical references to the military sites.
I do have problems with military equipment being labeled in such a way that it seems like it's our God against their God.
General Nash says the Pentagon should make the company remove the biblical codes.
They should fix them all. They do a modification on the sites, take off those inscriptions, and if they fail to do that, they should be penalized monetarily.
At the Pentagon, the Army and the Marines told ABC News they were unaware of the biblical codes until we contacted them.
One of the really cool things that I like about this site,
but on gun enthusiast and military websites, the presence of the New Testament references seem well known, as this gun reviewer pointed out the passage from the book of John.
I love it. I love it. Yes, Trigicon, those guys are Christians.
2 years ago in Afghanistan, American documentary filmmaker Brian Hughes saw boxes of New Testament Bibles published in Afghan languages.
It was clear that those Bibles were there for the purpose of being distributed to the Afghan people, not to other soldiers, not to other people on the base, but to Afghan civilians. So it was clear that they were prepared to operate outside the boundaries of General Order Number 1.
Understanding the Threat to America, the class's official title, hundreds of slides accuse dozens of Islamic groups, many widely recognized as mainstream advocacy groups, of infiltrating the U.S. media, education system, government, and even the military. A slide titled "The Muslim Brotherhood and Violence" shows a photo of an Al-Qaeda beheading, conflating the two groups. The hundreds of slides build a picture of a U.S. government co-opted by subversive Muslim elements. I received this from a military officer who was a student at that school. He was concerned that this was being taught and even implied that it was doctrine, so he emailed it to me. Here's what he had to say.
This bigoted conspiracy cabal was both disgusting and so deeply un-American at its core. Those who propagate these materials and those who empower the ones who develop them should be ashamed.
Faye Shakir is an expert on Islamophobia in the U.S. He worries about the impact it could have on military operations in the greater Middle East.
The fact that the training of these soldiers has been doctored and manipulated and created with the mindset that you need to think of those brown-skinned people with those certain names and those certain livelihoods and customs as the enemy.
The Pentagon's top officer, General Martin Dempsey, has called for a review of all military training courses. That will take some time, as the U.S. military has hundreds of schools and classes taught at facilities around the world. Until we told them about the outlawed brief, Pentagon officials were unaware of it, leaving us to wonder how many more courses like this could there be out there.
One of the Brotherhood's key spiritual leaders, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, said on Arabic TV, "Defeating Rome, Italy, and Europe means that Islam will come back to Europe. I believe Islam will conquer Europe without using violence."
If your body is healthy, it doesn't succumb to the various viruses that are in the air. But if your body becomes weak and the cells are not strong, then a virus can take over and control your body. And this is the thing about Europe. It's not a healthy body any longer. It's weak. It's lost its raison d'etre, its organizing principle, which is Christianity and freedom. It's lost all that. It's had experience with socialism. Of course, they've had the terrible world wars, and they've been torn between fascism and communism and all the other isms. But they've lost Christianity, and so they're sitting targets for a virus, and this Muslim Brotherhood thing is a virus coming into the body.
Well, that's a good example to use. And you know, with your body, if you know that your body is diminishing or weak in some way, you have to choose to do something about it, and that's what we're not seeing happen here, I think.
No, they're not. As a matter of fact, political correctness has done just exactly the opposite. When somebody brings on the thing that is needed to restore the health of the body, political correctness says, "Oh no, you're not tolerant." Boom. Well,
you're an extremist.
Yeah. I'm not tolerant against germs. I'm not tolerant against viruses. I'm not tolerant against infection.
في موقع مايكات بيردسيت بتاريخ مايو 2012 نشر مقال بعنوان دكتور بيارت يتساءل: هل هيئة الأركان رئيس ديمبسي أنهى الحرب على الإسلام منذ التحريض الصهيوني وزعمهم ادعاءات كاذبة بعد أحداث 11 سبتمبر؟ والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية مستمرة في حربها ضد الدين الإسلامي. وقد حاول عصبة من المحافظين الجدد من المسيحيين الصهاينة واليهود الذين كانوا وراء أحداث 11 سبتمبر إخفاء حربهم على الإسلام بدعوى إنها حرب على الإرهاب، ولكن في بعض الأحيان يفصح أحدهم عن الحقيقة.
كنت دائما أعتقد أنه من الخطأ ألا أبوح بحقيقة العراق، فهي في حقيقتها حرب ضد توسع الإسلام.
هذا رأي جيمس شال الخبير من المحافظين الجدد من جامعة جورج تاون. الغرض من أحداث سبتمبر ليس فقط لشن حروب على العراق وأفغانستان، ولكن الأهم من ذلك هو إيجاد سببا لخوض الولايات المتحدة حربا طويلة الأجل تمتد إلى أجيال قادمة ضد أعداء إسرائيل، وهم بالتحديد 1.5 مليار مسلم في العالم.
I thank you, every single one of you, for all that you do for Israel. Thank you for all that you do to fight anti-Semitism around the world. I thank you for what you do for the American Jewish community. I carry with me the commitment of President Obama, whose administration, I am proud to say, has done more than any before to ensure that Israel's future is strong and prosperous. Never has our security agreement been as great. Make no mistake, the President and the United States and I share your unshakable commitment to Israel's security.
I think the real question is, will a system develop in the Muslim world that's acceptable to people like David Cameron and Barack Obama and any Republican leader you can put your hand on? We're afraid of anything that has the word Islamic in it.
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.